Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef, and I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids, and passionate about helping more women to understand and accept their amazing ADHD brains. After speaking to many women just like me, and probably you, I know there is a need for more health and lifestyle support for women newly diagnosed with ADHD. In these conversations, you'll learn from insightful guests, hear new findings, and discover powerful perspectives and lifestyle tools to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm, and purposeful life wherever you are on your ADHD journey. Here's today's episode. Hi everyone. So today's episode is very, very exciting. I've got the one and only Dr. Hallowell back on the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. I'm genuinely so excited because to be able to speak to someone who's worked in this area of being able to see how the evolution of neurodivergence has presented over the years, and to be able to really ask him the questions and see what he's noticed. And he understands the nuances of ADHD like no other. And so I'm delighted that we have this exclusive conversation, this interview. Now, Dr. Ned actually wasn't feeling well on this day, and we had a few sort of tech issues at the beginning, very ADHD, but we finally got there. But in true ADHD style, Dr. Ned is doing all sorts of things while we're talking, and I didn't have the heart to mention anything. So if you do hear a bit of cluttering or rustling, just know that Dr. Ned is fully present, chatting away to me, but he is multitasking at the same time. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a heads up. But genuinely, I hope you enjoy this conversation. It was an absolute privilege to speak to him. And I hope that this conversation helps you guys, helps you understand and uncover your ADHD and find full, radical acceptance and self-compassion for who you are and what you're meant to be, and how you show up in this world with purpose and fulfillment. So here's this week's conversation. Welcome back, Dr. Ned. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's so nice to be with you. And
you have a new book. The book's called ADHD Explained. Now, I'm still raving about your book, ADHD 2.0, which is here. It's always on my desk. I talk about it all the time with my clients. And it's, for me, it was a real savior. So can you tell me a little bit about maybe what the difference between 2.0 is and ADHD Explained?
They're very different in format. 2.0 is, straight standard text with prose. And it's very short. It's only 100 pages, but it's a standard book. Whereas ADHD Explained is full of illustrations. DK, the publishing company, they're famous for their children's books, and which, of course, have illustrations. Well, this is for adults, but it's also got a lot of illustration. And so it's short, it's pithy, it's epigrammatic, it's soundbite type thing. So, it's ADD very friendly. And the hope was to bring ADD to the Brits, because for the longest while, you guys have been of the stiff upper lip model of dealing with ADD, and that model is not a good one. So we hope to present it in a way that people will read it. That's the challenge: get people with ADD to read a book.
Yeah,
absolutely. This is that you can do it. It's so visually appealing. It's, even if you don't like to read, you can tackle this book because it's full of illustrations and diagrams, and it's funny. But it has the information that you'd find in my other books.
It's great to hear, because I think so many of us learn in different ways, don't we? And we absorb information and process information in different ways. And right. I hear, so many times to sit and read a whole book when we've got ADHD is really difficult. I found your ADHD 2.0 very digestible. And I sat and I just dedicated every night a different chapter. But I think I definitely learn better audio style. I listen to lots of audio books and podcasts. Yes. But then sometimes just have something in black and white, something like a diagram or a doodle or something like that, where you can just straight away understand it. Yeah, you can straight. Right. Who's the book targeted at? Is it adults? Is it children?
Oh, adults. Yeah, definitely adults. Yeah.
Okay.
The feeling was that adults are the biggest undiagnosed market around the world. And in England, you guys, like I said, you guys are coming out of years of stiff upper lip. And
Yeah.
so, you still have people over there who think this diagnosis doesn't exist, that it's just a stupid American invention. We have to show them otherwise, because it's such a wonderful condition to get diagnosed, because you can really change, you can change a person's life more dramatically. This condition can change someone's life than, I think, more dramatically than anything we diagnose in all of medicine.
Yeah, I agree
So,
with you.
so it's good news when you get this diagnosis. The bad news is when you don't have the diagnosis.
Yeah. I have a lot of people that message me and say, because of the podcast, I've just recently got my diagnosis. And my response is always congratulations. Because, like you say, it's like, finally, thank goodness, you know what's going on.
Well,
And
why don't we,
these,
in case someone like that is listening now, why don't we tell them what it looks like? So if you're listening now and you don't know what ADHD is, it is a condition. It's a way of being in the world. Is what it is. That's genetically transmitted. You're born with it. It's a combination of blessings and curses. The downside of it is you can be very impulsive, disorganized, trouble get planning, so-called executive function. You can forget things. You can leave your coffee back on the counter. You can leave your briefcase sitting on the side of the road. You can get off at the wrong stop. You can seem like you're an absent-minded professor. And what that ends up doing is a lot of people with this condition underachieve. They know they could do better, but they don't know why they're not doing better. And that's because they don't know that this thing exists. If you think you have it, based on that you've got what I call a race car brain with bicycle brakes. Your brain is a runaway brain. It's going a mile a minute. It never stops. Like a popcorn machine, pop, 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 just constant ideas, thoughts, images, and yet you're not able to direct it. Well, that means you're underachieving, probably.
yeah,
And the beauty of it is, if you find out that this is what you've got, the medication can act like a pair of eyeglasses or a set of brakes. You can slow your brain down enough to get something done, and you can focus well enough that you can see. Another analogy is like eyeglasses,
yeah,
because a lot of people who have this are struggling just to focus at all, to get their ideas out. So once you learn about it and you get the insight that comes with the diagnosis, that is a relief, that you don't have you're not stupid and you're not lazy. A lot of these people have carried their whole life the labels like stupid, lazy, spoiled, wayward, incorrigible, stubborn. We do tend to be stubborn, so that one's okay. But we're very strong-willed, passionate. We're fun people. We're strong, passionate people. But if you have it and don't know you have it, just what I'm saying now is probably grabbing your attention. You're like, really, really, really? Because then suddenly you have this reaction of, my God, there's a name for it. And
yeah,
then, yes, there is. And then there's something you can do about it. The combination of coaching, sort of learning about it, and medication can be absolutely game changing. Now, some people are afraid of medication. You don't have to take the meds, but they work. When they work 80% of the time, they work dramatically well. And they're, given properly, they're very safe. So most people don't want meds, but it's not for any good reason. They're basing their opinion on wrong information or lack of information or both.
yeah.
And so if you learn about the meds, you won't be afraid of them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I know that there's been circumstances where people have tried different meds and it's not quite worked for them. They didn't like the feeling. I mean, I was only speaking to a client today who tried a few different ones and was on it for a while and then came off it to go on holiday and actually realized she felt better within herself now that she had the awareness. Now she had the diagnosis and she was seeking help in different ways, that the medication she didn't feel that she needed right then. But for interesting, she was a doctor. She's a GP, a general practitioner, and she has made a decision that if she needs to go and study or she needs to go to a seminar or if she's got lots of paperwork, that's when she'll use the medication. So she's sort of curating a way of being with the medication. And I understand that very well. When I see the medication work, when I hear that it works. It's incredible. I'm so happy because people say it's life-changing,
Oh, it is.
and how they can all of a sudden like feel like they can be like a human. They just say, now I understand how everyone gets things done. Now I understand why people can finish their tasks. And they didn't understand that before. And it's incredible, the awareness. And I know you talk about the UK. This podcast is global. I actually have more American listeners than UK listeners, weirdly.
Oh, no kidding. Really? Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Wow. Wow.
So, and it's interesting, but the UK is finally coming up to speed. We are definitely very much behind, but we're still on the backlog for sure. But even just the past year or so, just the awareness and the acknowledgement, there's a lot more training going on with GPs, and they're really understanding, but we're still very far behind. And I know that your books, for sure, just handing a book to someone who works in healthcare profession where, I've been speaking to, I do a lot of work now with women and hormones. So women can really understand the interconnection between how their hormones may interplay with their ADHD. They may feel different at different times of the month. And just that awareness alone for different doctors, so they can understand when around birth control or menopause, and all these different intricacies that women have felt in different periods of their life, postpartum, the week before their period, or as they're entering perimenopause. This is when women are starting to feel very different, and their ADHD is kind of starting to flare up, in a very unmanageable way. What I'd love to ask you is, you've written all these books throughout all the different decades. You've been part of this field for so long. You are the pioneer of ADHD, and you've just written this new book. What new findings are you still, learning? Like, what are you still learning about this condition, and what's still blowing your mind about it?
What makes this way of being, if you will, so interesting is I'm learning all the time. The recent discovery for me is out of brain research or fMRI, the so-called default mode network. And what we've found is that when you're doing something, your imagination lights up. When you're doing something creative, it lights up, and four different regions create what's called the task positive network, the TPN. And that's when you're at your best. You're creating, you're building, you're dreaming, you're achieving, you're accomplishing whatever it is you're building and creating, from a house to a book to a pie. Um, but when you've finished building, creating, whatever it might happen to be, the TPN, the task positive network, shuts down. People used to think the brain just takes a rest. No, 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 no. What lights up are four other regions, all part of the imagination. This is all part of the imagination. It's interesting. The imagination, which we know is very, very real, we don't know where it is in the brain, and I think it's all through the brain. So, but anyway, whatever it is that's called the imagination, it lights up when the TPN shuts down, and it's called the default mode network for other regions in the brain. And for us with ADD, for some reason, it tends to send out just horrible messages about ourselves, our lives, our futures. It just lays us out, it attacks us, and it's sort of your imagination turns against you. While your imagination is our greatest asset, we'll build and create things. Then it can turn against us and become our worst enemy and just eviscerate us. So when that happens, that's why so many people with ADD brood and ruminate and
Catastrophize, have
yeah,
anxiety.
it's often mistaken for depression, but it's not depression. It's just you're in the grip of the DMN, the default mode network, which I call the demon. You're in the grip of the demon, and you doesn't respond to antidepressant medication. What it responds to is doing something else. But that's hard to do. The reason you pay attention to the demon is it's gripping. And remember, we're always looking for high stimulation. Well, contentment is too bland. You don't say she was riveted in contentment, but you do say she was riveted in fear, self hatred, life hatred, conflict, self attack. All of that is riveting. And that's the gain we get. We get what we're always looking for is a stimulus strong enough to hold our attention. So to shut it off, you have to redirect your attention. which is not easy because it's so gripping. This negative onslaught, it does hold your attention. So you have to have sort of a Rolodex of what other things can I attend to that will allow me to shut off the DMN. Could be vigorous exercise, could be loud music, could be uh, cooking something, could be making love, could be anything that you can get involved in that will hold your attention well enough that the DMN will shut down. And the minute you withdraw your attention from it, it's gone. It can't live for a second without your attention. So people will sit there staring out the window, just in a horrible place mentally, just lambasting themselves. And what they need to learn to do is just to switch channels, tune into something else.
Yeah.
Uh, but it has to be stimulating enough that it can take you away from the demon.
So I'm just interrupting today's podcast just to give you a bit of an update on the different events and workshops that I've got going on. I don't want you guys to miss anything. So you may have seen on social media that I have an exclusive event with ADHD pioneer. She's a psychotherapist and author, Sari Solden. She's been on the podcast. It was about a year ago, and she is incredible. She's written numerous books, but her book, which has been pretty much on my desk ever since I started coaching ADHD women, A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD, is incredible. And I recommend this to so many people who've just been diagnosed. So when she came on the podcast it was a year ago, I said to her, I would absolutely love to do an event with you. And finally it's happened. So this is happening on the 19th of October at 7 p.m. UK time. And we're going to be doing a live conversation interview, but also a Q&A. So if you show up live and you're there, you will get the opportunity to ask Sari anything you want with regards to neurodivergence, ADHD, and really kind of tapping into her knowledge and wisdom, because she's seen it all in her 35 years of being a psychotherapist in this area. So all the details are going to be on my website, adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. That's also going to be on today's show notes. Please head to those links, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed with this conversation with someone who really knows her stuff and has all the answers, I hope, for anyone that's just starting this journey with ADHD. And also, if you head to my website, you'll get an update on a nervous system 4-part workshop that I have created. And this is all based on the polyvagal theory. So if you are interested in help with regulating, calming, soothing your nervous system, that you've really noticed that you live in a very sort of hypervigilant, sympathetic state of being in this sort of place where you don't quite feel settled, and you want to be able to find new practical tools and daily practices to help calm and regulate, I would highly recommend you have a look at the workshop series and see if it's for you. There's only a few places left. And finally, just to let you know, the hormone series is still going strong. I can't get over how many people have downloaded it. And I'm adding new content right now. We've got 2 new speakers that are just going in, Kate Shepherd-Cohen and Nicola Harker. Nicola is a doctor and she specializes in self-compassion. And Kate Shepherd-Cohen created the menstrual cycle support resource, which is going into over 500 GP surgeries as we speak. Both incredible women who know their stuff, who really understand the neurodivergent women, the impact of hormones, and how we can help ourselves through these challenging times. So all the information is on my website, adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. Now back to today's episode. So what's interesting, so this summer at Cape Cod, I did the 5-day course with Deb Danner, who is all, the polyvagal expert. And absolutely, I'm really fascinated by the nervous system and really fascinated about regulating what I believe is there's an ADHD nervous system, and really being able to understand how our nervous system, plays. It's all integral because of our heightened, I would say, hypervigilance or anxiety, which is all connected to the DMN. And obviously she talks about this notion of like triggers and glimmers, and the glimmers being that distraction away from our DMN. So we're finding every day a little something, a glimmer that we can pull back, so we can pull away from the anxiety and the catastrophization. And that's really, really helped me. And I've been sort of working with clients about that, really just honing in on what glimmers can you find on a daily basis, an hourly basis, that can pull you away from that DMN. Do you understand what I mean when I say the ADHD nervous system.
Explain to me what you mean by it. It's very interesting. What is the ADHD nervous system?
The way I perceive it
Yeah,
and how I understand it through my lens is never quite feeling like settled, that we're allowed to rest, that it's okay to rest, that we're always on the edge. There's always something else, or there's something we've missed, or something we've overseen. Maybe we don't feel like we belong somewhere, so we kind of don't feel quite safe. So it's like, the way I sort of describe it is like a hypervigilant state.
but is it
And
always negative? I mean, what about the times when we're very constructive and creative, and we're not. We're, so it's got to have a positive
there
element
is a
to it.
positive because it makes us high achievers, ambitious. We get things done. We're efficient when we want to be, when we're interested, we're hyper focusing. But then on the flip side, I see a huge amount of burnout in my practice. And a lot of women have these cycles. I mean, I only deal with women. So I work with a lot of women who've experienced cycles of burnout where it's not sustainable to live in this hypervigilant state,
Right,
where they're getting lots done, but
right.
eventually they crash, the endocrine system, or the adrenals, or whatever you want to say, but eventually it's just, they've not given themselves this permission to rest or to slow down.
And how does the polyvagal stuff figure into it?
Because I think it's really interesting to learn how to regulate our nervous system so we can see where we are in the situation, in the place that we are, and recognize maybe what our triggers are, how we're feeling in the moment, and find practical tools to help us feel calmer, safer, more relaxed, maybe just accepting and more compassionate about who we are and where and why we're like this. And hopefully each time, I mean, I just genuinely believe that being ADHD, we're just constantly learning. We have lesson after lesson after.
We're sponges. I mean, we are
Yes.
endlessly curious.
Yeah.
We're endlessly curious, and it can
Yeah.
get us into trouble sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
To our
but
detriment sometimes, because we sign up for things, we agree to things, we commit to things. We'll say,
yeah,
yes, we'll do another podcast. Yes, I'll do another degree. And then we realize,
whoops.
yeah. And then everything comes, crashing down. And unfortunately, there's a price to pay for that. And I do see that. And I see that a lot with, again, I sort of say women, especially women who are mothers, who have got careers, who are ambitious, like you say, curious, they're learners. They want to do all the things, but then their nervous system crashes. And unfortunately, we can't quite keep up. It's like our nervous system can't keep up with our brains. So we have to learn to put those brakes on that you talk about, but maybe in a more sort of like gentle way, in a way that feels more sustainable, that sometimes doesn't feel as exciting, unfortunately, but has to be a sustainable way. Or find the exciting things in things that don't feel as, I don't know, as difficult all the time. But I'm still learning, and I'm still, guiding people. But I very much, I think I definitely refer to the ADHD nervous system because I really relate to that, and I feel like there's a lot of other women that do as well. And I'm just curious about your take on that.
Oh, I think you're spot on. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, no, it's part of what makes us different, and we're different in a wonderful way, or it can be a terrible way if we don't know how to manage it. But if we know how to manage it, then our difference is an advantage, if you will. And I wouldn't trade my ADD for the world, and I don't think you would trade yours.
Probably not, but I do sometimes, like when you talk about the DMN, and I can go into those places. I mean, my default beginning of any conversation is what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? And I create all sorts of scenarios. But I've checked myself now. I see it, I hear it, and I'm like, okay, what am I saying? Like this, what if? And so the awareness for me has been the biggest gift, because I can recognize that DMN and see it for what it is, and see it's not real. Like all the what ifs that I'm coming up with, they're not real. Some may be
I, I
real.
wrote I wrote a whole book about worry, and one of the chapters was the infinite web of what if. It's infinite. Every what if begets another what if and another what if. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
you see, that's true. That's why people who worry a lot, like me, we tend to be very smart and very creative, because it takes a lot of smarts and creativity to dream up all the crap we worry about, you know?
So you relate to worry. That's interesting. So you're a worrier.
Oh, yes, terrible. I've learned to, the tricks that I'm telling you today, to change the channel, but it still intrudes. And, I still walk around with this forbidding, with this sense that something bad is going to happen. And, it's pre-verbal. I just have this, I live in a state of subdued fear. And, I happen to believe in God, but religious faith doesn't touch it. I mean, Jesus said, "Fear nothing." Well, that's lost on me because I fear so much, and I found the best antidote is not medication, but it's human connection. So I have a mantra that never worry alone. Worry becomes toxic when you worry alone.
From one worrier to another, what are your worrying top hacks? Because I would love to combat this. I have a mum that's a worrier, I'm a worrier, and I've got a daughter that's a worrier, and we're all ADHD.
Number one is never worry alone. So if there's a person you can worry with, that's the best. Could be a dog as well. Lie with your dog. So some living being, if you can, then you turn to things that you have a close connection with. So it almost feels like you're with someone. So a piece of music, a piece of literature, a place in nature, a meal, a food, any of these ways that strike your memory buttons, and you can enter into the larger, something larger than yourself. That's your goal, is to feel that you're held in a place that's larger than you are. And it really is true. In giving we receive, so if you can get into the giving mode, your worry disappears. When you're doing for someone else, mothering them, serving them, working with them, you don't worry because you're focused on them. So if you can get your focus off yourself onto your children, your friend, your job, your whatever, and put that mental energy into problem solving or what have you. Because when you worry alone, what happens is you catastrophize, you globalize, you get sick, you feel sick. Your musculoskeletal system, your digestive system, your headaches. I mean, worrying alone is really bad for you, and so you want to get in the habit of. But the thing again is, it's so seductive. It's very hard to let go of a worry because, in a funny way, we like it. In a funny way, we feel like if we're not worrying, we're in danger because fate will strike us down and prove us who's boss. So we try to beat fate to the punch and worry, what if, and so we're constantly running around trying to keep the entire universe from sweeping us away. And we live in these very apocalyptic places. We are not minor cuts and bruises. We're eradication of the human race, or total bankruptcy, or a plague upon us. We use this is again where we use our imagination to torture ourselves, and that's where having another person can help you gain perspective and keep your brain from running away with you.
Yeah. So is your wife one of those people that you can get perspective from? Does she help you, bring you back?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally. We've brought it down to shorthand. So I'll tell her this elaborate worry I've got, and she'll listen, and then she'll look at me and she'll say, "You're crazy." That's very helpful to me. You see, it's very good. You mean everything I've said just it makes no sense. That's correct. You're crazy. And so it sounds like she's insulting me, but it's tremendously reassuring to know all these worries have no place in reality. That the imagination is, and that's what psychosis is sort of the imagination gone off the tracks. Hearing voices or imagining someone's out to get you. I mean, that's just your imagination going off the track. So when she can say you're crazy, I can say, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about it. Now, it took a while before I'd believe her. We've been together for 35 years. So, but it took a while before I'd believe her when she said I was crazy. I'd say, oh, you don't understand,
Yeah.
but now I believe her, and I say, "Thank you, sweetheart. That's the best thing you could ever say to me."
Yeah. I mean, I think I might be speaking for many of the listeners right now, but I think it's very, oh my God, it feels good and validating to hear Ned Hallowell say that he worries hugely as well, because it is part of the way our brain works, and it is part of the way, it operates. And in a way, this imagination is what brings us to, we're business leaders, we're entrepreneurs, we're creatives, we're innovators, but that also takes us down the other route of the catastrophization.
Absolutely. Our greatest asset, our imagination, becomes our worst enemy. And it's sort of the price you pay for having an imagination is the downside. Your capacity to imagine horrific situations and get stuck in it. And the best thing is to have someone in your life like Sue who can just tell you that's crazy. As long as you believe them and trust them,
Yeah.
the bubble gets burst.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I mean, do you
yeah.
think this is like an evolutionary way of the neurodivergent brain? Do you think we, as part of society, were sort of made to be the hunters, like, from the book? Are we those people that obviously we're not meant to be followers? We're meant to be the leaders. We're meant to be the ones that are spearheading things and beginning things and innovating. And is that just part and parcel of just the way our brain works, that we just, from an evolutionary perspective, that's just how
Yeah, I
it
think so.
is?
We're way more wired to feel fear than love or security. We are geared up to detect that saber-toothed tiger, or we're geared up to be aware of danger out there. Our much more sensory system, muscular, everything is much more geared toward anticipating, perceiving, and dealing with danger than thinking deep thoughts, or particularly consoling thoughts. When you think of what did nature give us biologically in terms of feeling pleasure? Well, food and sex, come to mind right away, but then a higher levels pleasure. I think folks like you and me, we access that higher level pleasure through creativity, through inventing whatever it is we're creating. It could be a podcast, could be a conversation, could be a book or what. That's our high level pleasure. But there's so many low level you know pits and valleys that we can fall into, because our nervous system would much rather have us ward off danger than feel pleasure. I mean, nature really doesn't care if we feel pleasure. We care, and we're avid about trying to find joy, and we pursue it with wild abandon. But nature, as long as we're not getting eaten up by a tiger, nature, says, okay, fend for yourself. But nature does give us food and sex, and so and the capacity. I shouldn't be so dismissive. In our imagination, the capacity to create and perceive beauty. That's something we're really good at, and that is a genuine pleasure. I mean, it is, and for that matter, to perceive the wonderfulness of love. We are much more rhapsodic and mean it and feel it when we talk about love, or when we talk about a sunset. I mean, we have this extraordinary ability through our imagination to perceive and create and celebrate beauty. Think of all the art that's ever been created. That's what it is. It's a celebration of beauty. And beauty doesn't just mean something that's pretty. It means something that has order to it. So when you create something, is you're bringing order out of chaos. It's triumph over what scientists call entropy. The law of entropy is everything tends to go to the maximum state of disorganization, i.e., chaos. And so what art does is it opposes that and arranges things so they have this, what William Blake called fearful symmetry, and that's, we are driven to that in a way that we can ignore ordinary rewards like money, food, and sex, for that matter.
Yeah, it's interesting because all this is just helping people to understand the way their brains are wired so they can do the things to help themselves. So, for me, I have to be outside in nature. I have to look after myself, make sure that I'm eating well, drinking. And this is every day. It's not just, oh, you do it for like a few days and then, you go back. It's an everyday work in progress. But once we get into this routine and this habit of going, right, I need to prioritize a walk in nature. I need to prioritize making sure I sleep well. I connect with the people that, are meaningful to me. I sit down and have time with my kids, with my dog. It starts building a life with more meaning. And for me, I think that's where, it starts, taking shape for people with ADHD, especially when it's been undiagnosed for so long, when all this chaos, and then we can bring a little bit of order to it in the way that feels good to us.
Oh yeah, we need those touchstones, those places where we can repose. We can find stability in truth and beauty. And these are not just words. We really feel these things. We feel the power of truth, for example. We are very mission driven, and
Justice.
we perceive injustice and feel it. We want to go oppose injustice. We're sticking up for the underdog. These are drives for us. So when you talk about truth and justice, they sound like words on a plaque, but for us, they're living dynamic forces. And injustice, and and unfortunately, with Samuel Johnson put it, we are living in a world bursting with sin and sorrow. You think about that, bursting with sin and sorrow. And, he wrote those words in about 1750, and it's even more bursting in 2023. We've discovered all kinds of new ways of sinning and finding sorrow, even that life itself is loss, is sorrow. So, but it's also birth and growth. There's all these opposites. It's one of the things about ADD is all these opposites. You can hyper focus and you can space out. You can impulsively create something wonderful, or you can impulsively steal. There are all these opposites. You can feel wonderful, but your inner self thinks you're a big fat loser, and just all. And if you can just realize that it's just parts of the gizmo, parts of the organism that that we are perplexing and wonderful. I mean, your audience, I would say to them, be glad of who you are, celebrate it, and learn from others, share who you are, and share your real self, your true self. Because if you share a false self, that's no benefit to you or the other person for that matter. But sharing your real self, your true self, will give you the enormously wonderful pleasure of connection, true connection, not bogus connection.
Yeah. And I think that is beautiful. And so many of us are learning to unmask that we've lived these lives of masking and pretending and trying to
Yes,
subdue who we are, because we're
yes.
not sort of the stereotypical woman or the stereotypical mother, but actually when we get the diagnosis, we're able to kind of peel away those layers and just be that authentic self. And what happens is there's grief there, and the women I speak to, they look back and they say, I can see that in my mum, I see that in my grandma, and they go through the generations and they see that these women weren't able to have in their life. And so it's a blessing that we have this awareness. Who knows what's gonna, in 10 years time. But what I'd love to finish on is, what do you see the future with ADHD like? What legacy would you like to leave? And someone that's given so much and written so many amazing books, like where would you like to see ADHD, in 10 years, 20 years?
Well, I would like to see that, I was someone who led us to jettison the deficit disorder, the medical model, keep it medical for sure, but jettison the model that stresses pathology and only pathology. And instead, I'd like to think that I opened it up to include the gifted part and the troubled part. That the way to triumph over the troubled part is to focus on the gifted part. Grow the strengths, grow the creativity, and you'll crowd out the negative. I think people spend too much time dissecting and attending to the negative. But what you really build a life on is developed strengths, not remediated weaknesses. Now, in order to develop strengths, you do have to remediate some weaknesses. So I'm not saying ignore or deny the downside, but I am saying promote, celebrate, develop the upside. I mean, that's where the real gold is. It's in the upside. And if you don't see an upside, find someone who does. And so I like to think that I'm sort of a pioneer in that I said, no, this bleak deficit disorder, while sure there are those symptoms, but you're ignoring the amazing feast on the other side of the hill. And we can do things other people can't do. We have magic powers. That's what imagination is. It's the ability to create, so it's making something out of nothing. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
And most of what we make is useless, maybe even annoying. But then something comes along that's a gem that's worth a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, takes a few tries.
The guy who invented the PCR reaction, which is the test we use for COVID, had flaming ADD, and he did indeed win a Nobel Prize in chemistry for it.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we can lay claim to Nobel Prize winners, Pulitzer Prize winners, self-made billionaires. Most entrepreneurs have this condition. But then, so the prisons are full of us, and the halls of the addicted, and the unemployed, the multiply divorced. So it can be terrible. I've had one patient say to me, if this thing is such a gift, where do I return it? It can make your life miserable. But that's kind of my mission, has been to show people how to turn it into a gift. I'm misquoted sometimes as saying ADD is a gift. No, it doesn't unwrap itself. So you need to have very attentive, informed, supported unwrapping. To get at the good stuff.
Yeah. And unfortunately, with the way society is, it is a bit of a luck of the draw of who
So much so.
that, the privilege, and, who, with the education system and all these things. But I think having these conversations and being able to make these conversations, out there on a podcast, and your knowledge in a book, who knows where all this disseminates, and hopefully it gets into the hands of the people that can make changes and help educate and change
Look at
lives.
you. Look at you for an example. You have ADD, and you've got 4 children who have it too. And most people say that's enough. But you say no. I'm going to go do a podcast. I'm going to share it with the world. And you've organized, produced this thing that it's not easy to do. Believe me, podcasts are not easy to do, and you've given your life's blood to this without neglecting your family at all. I mean, I've heard you talk about them. You're very devoted to them, but that's another part of our upside, is we can get a lot more done. In fact, if we're not busy, if we're not challenged, we're usually not very happy. You know,
Absolutely.
we say, "Bring it on, life! I'm ready for you." Now you can get too much, true, but we're in the "bring it on" camp, as opposed to the "I want to lie down and make the world go away" camp. We can feel that way now and then, but our main thrust is to grow and celebrate, and it's written all over you, and it's just wonderful how you've done this, and it's
Thank
an
you.
honor for me to come on your show.
Oh my goodness. Well, likewise. And I 100% agree. I think it's striking that balance of keeping ourselves busy and, and just having that kind of stimulation, but trying not to burn ourselves out. So it's
Exactly.
constantly this balance, but some
It's
days
so true. It's so true. So true. You're doing this all the time. Yeah.
constantly, and it's never quite equal. But on the days that it is, it's like, wow, how do I bottle that? How do I find that?
I got it for a moment.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. What made me laugh, and then we will finish here, is that a few months ago, my husband took all the kids and they all went away for the night. They were all different places. I was in the house on my own for the very first time, just me and the dog.
Yep.
And the first hour, I was like, oh my God, this is bliss. I can't believe it. Second hour, ooh. By literally the evening, I was like, I'm really bored. Where is
Yep.
everyone? This is not what I imagined.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and it
Exactly.
was lovely, but I prefer the chaos. I prefer the noise and the busyness.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
That's why we're so at home in today's world. It's
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, well, listen, Dr. Ned, thank you so, so much for being here. I can't wait to air this. I can't wait for everybody to listen to it again. And it's been an honor. And I will make sure that everybody gets the link to where to buy the book. Just repeat the
Great.
book. It's the ADHD Explained, and
ADHD Explained. Yep.
it should be out now.
Should be from DK, British publisher.
Honestly, thank you so much. And I really appreciate it, because I know that you've not been feeling well.
You made me feel a lot better. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope you found what you were looking for in this conversation, and it's helped guide you towards some further self-healing, self-exploration, and most importantly, self-acceptance. And if you have enjoyed this conversation and would like to experience more of my work, such as access to exclusive live workshops and opportunities for group coaching sessions, connecting with other like-minded women, and a general feeling of belonging, please come and check out my monthly membership, the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Collective. I've made it as affordable as possible, and I offer you lots of resources and opportunities for connection and support from other women all around the world being diagnosed with ADHD later on in life. I'd absolutely love to see you there. All the details are in this episode's show notes or on my website, adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. See you in the next episode.